Okay, hello. Today is May 18th, 2020, and I'm going to do a reading on, somewhat by request, uh, to deal with looking at addiction in the 45s family. Let me put it that way. We're looking at addiction here within that family. And in particularly, now we know that, of course, the older brother, Fred, died as a result of alcoholism. And often this runs in families, this addictive. I know it runs in mine. So I'm curious to look at especially Fred and, what is her? Is it Marion? Marianne? Hold on a tick. I just need to get some. Okay. And I still didn't grab her birth date information. Well, the interesting thing was, as I'm going to focus on each parent separately. First, I'm going to focus on Marianne because from what I've come to understand, Marianne, it's Mary Trump, Mary McLeod Trump. She was not ever really present in Don's life very much. And this comes from recounts of his friends that used to come over and hang out with him in his childhood, that they recall the father watching him play sometimes even, which kind of surprises me a bit to hear this from a third party. But they responded that they never remember seeing her very often. There were times when she did give them money, like to go get some ice cream, but there wasn't a lot of interaction or even seeing Mary. Um, there was a very detached. She wasn't very involved in his life. And I don't know why. I mean, was it because now he was a difficult child? Was it at that time that she detached from him? Maybe she found, like, I don't want to deal with that. The housekeeper, according to childhood friends, was somebody that they saw regularly. And his dad, whom they said he put on a pedestal, in the sense of he always had a picture of his father on his father's desk. And only maybe recently added her picture. But it was standard for him not to have a picture of his mother on his desks. Always the dad. Now I thought, well, that's maybe why Trump placed more value on his father, and because the image of his father, and using his father's success as to make himself look good. So on some point, I think a great deal of that could be his own misogyny, but I also think, where did some of his misogyny come from? I think certainly his father, but I think also, if there was such a detached relationship where he never really bonded very much with his mom, that might also create a lack of appreciation for women, or a low opinion of them, or a conflicted feeling. That is something interesting to look at. I know that he also, though rumoredly, had trouble with his dad. I thought I read at some point, and it was not, I try to make sure that I read resources that are standard so that you're not reading some tabloid site that doesn't have perhaps the most reliable information. But I also had read that Trump had at some point, his dad, I felt like, found Don to be a pain in the ass. Because it was, there was a story about him yet being, I think, at whatever school he went to, and he was a teen or maybe a very young adult. His father came to collect him for some event. 45 answered the door, and he wasn't wearing formal attire, but I think this was to some sort of more of a sporting event, so he was wearing something like that. And his father, Fred, slapped him, and there were other people in front of other people, and told him to go change immediately. No, 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 no. Oh, I'm sorry. That's what Trump did to his son, Don Jr. Okay, anyway, I want to look at his relationship with his parents. And I think I'll split it in two videos. A look at Trump and his dad, and a look at Trump of his mother, because I think otherwise that could be trouble. Let's look. I really want to know why he was so distant from his mom. Was it just because his mom had no interest in dealing with him? Was she not a very maternal person? They did describe her as being fond of, you know, doing her own thing, and being very much involved in how things looked and that kind of thing. She just, frankly, sounds a bit shallow. And really wasn't, I think, terribly interested in raising children, or at least perhaps Donnie. I think she left that pretty much to other people. I don't know if the same can be said with her daughters, but let's just take a look. What was Donald Trump's mother like? Mary Trump. What was Mary Trump like? Why didn't Donald have a good relationship with her? How come Mary wasn't involved in Donald's life very much? How come Mary Trump, let's look at her. How come Mary Trump was not involved with Donald growing up? How come she didn't have much involvement with him? Was it her own choice? How did she feel about Donald? How did she feel about motherhood? How come she did not have much involvement? Or presence in Trump's childhood? How come? We're looking at Mary McLeod Trump, and we want to see it from her point of view, and I'm asking the spirit of the tarot, and I'm asking the spirit of the ancestors, and the spirit of truth. So we want to see why Mary McLeod was so distant from Trump. Why wasn't she involved in his life? This is about Mary and Donald. Now, I don't know. Hold on, I gotta go grab her zodiac sign. Okay, so gathered that all up. The information on Fred Trump and Mary Trump, their zodiac information. Mary, let's see, in case I didn't get her. Mary was a Taurus with a Taurus ascendant. She did have a birth time listed as 4 a.m. in Scotland, of course, wherever she was born. I didn't quite grab the name of it. And she had, just in her chart, just looking real quick, she had a lot in Taurus. So she had her sun in Taurus, and her moon, though, was in Aquarius. Her ascendant was in Taurus. Okay. Now, interestingly enough, Fred Sr. was a Libra, and he didn't have a time that was given, but Fred has a he has like what would be possibly, it looked like, it's kind of hard to find their information so much, but I got both that he could be either Aries or Pisces moon. So kind of think maybe Aries. But that's interesting. So I can know these. So let's look at Mary. Why didn't Mary? Why wasn't she involved with Donald? Because, you know, Taurans can be very domestic oriented. They can be very family oriented if they're positively aspected in that way. They can also be, if negatively aspected, extremely petty. They can be where they need a lot of attention and they need everything their way. They can be self-absorbed. And I think maybe Mary was that way. But let's just look. Mary. Y'all going like 12 minutes. Come on, Maya. But folks, this is work. So hang in there. Here we go. Mary. Well, there she is. She's showing up. Queen of Pentacles. Queen of Coins. I must say, not fussed with the quote-unquote high def on this. Maybe I just need to change a setting. I just plugged it in, so this camera. She gets judgment crossing her with concern to why there was this distance. So this was, I think, perhaps a habit in her own family that was passed down. I get a feeling of a repetition of behavior from past that has an effect that created a problem that needed changing, because it's in a position of challenge to her. And I'm wondering, like, did she know, like, I should do more, but she just couldn't bring herself to be interested? I don't know. Just a thought. She was very materialistic. She was very fond of her things. That was mentioned in articles. And it's more of a feeling here is that she was more off in her own little world, not maybe so interested in being close to her children, terribly close to having to deal with them. I think more that she grew up, I know she grew up poor, but she also, I don't think her household was very warm. And I think because they didn't have much, and that probably contributed to her, once she married Fred, just being consumed with the idea of having things, getting her nails done, living her own life. I just get this flash. Yes, you know, this is based upon a King of Pentacles, and to me, though her husband was not an earth sign, he was definitely a businessman. Her father could have been an earth sign for all I know. This is going back further in time as a basis, and it could have been that she wasn't very close to her own father. Uh, Maybe this created something in her parenting ability. Or just once she married a very wealthy man, that's where her mind was at. Yeah, look, she's crowned by more of an interest in material things, nice clothes, nice things that she liked. I can't say from some of the pictures I've seen that I could say that I think her taste was all that exquisite with hair in particularly. But, well, let's just say Mary had things that she liked. I don't know that she was. There's just such a tackiness in that family. I don't know. I think Mary may have been a little bit tacky. The hair. Anyway, not for nothing, you guys. Not for nothing. Okay, so let's look at her past. Death, an end, and a radical change. Well, I think that when she definitely left Scotland, she was quite young. It was, she was so poor that I think this focus on material wealth, when she got into a position in her life where she had this. I think that she became absorbed with wealth and looking after herself first, honestly. I'm not seeing the mother that is in a rush to, on the positive aspect of judgment, look after her child. But this deals more with a judgment on, I think, a lack of maternal uh, concern, emotional bonding. I just think there was a radical change, not only once she got with Fred, but going back even further, that changed something in her that may have, if you will, because normally a Taurus can be very nurturing, but they can be odd. It just depends on their nature. Like, I had a grandmother that was very wonderful toward me as a grandmother, but more difficult with one of my parents. She had a lot of problems, and she also happened to be a Taurus. And I'm wondering, I don't think Mary was exactly like, but I think there's some similarities in kind of a self-absorption or at first a concern. I don't know how she was as a grandmother either, though. I get a feeling kind of distant, but I could be wrong. Something really changed in her past. I think with the pregnancies, it may have been, I wonder, because she had a number of children, right? She had Marianne, her daughter. She had Fred, who I think was his older brother. And Mary had a number of children, but I just, maybe with Donald, maybe she came close to death. And maybe that was a thing. I'll have to read up on that. There was some event that made a radical change where that was concerned. And there's this Knight of Swords where there's a very quick energy, a very reactive energy, as a result of this. That she may, I feel like, may have been a bit short-tempered with him. Now, Taurians can certainly be short-tempered, very short-tempered. If, from what I remember growing up, my father's also a Taurus, and one of my grandmothers, Taurus, and my mother-in-law was a Taurus, but she was more chill. My mother-in-law was very much more the nurturer Taurus. Now, this feels kind of hostile here. And I just feel like this was an energy that developed between Trump and his mom. I think he resented her lack of bond with him. I think he resented her lack of time or attention that she would give him. And I think it contributed to his like ADD type of, and that's not to say that everyone that has ADD doesn't have attentive parents. That's not true. One of my oldest has it, not my oldest, one of my youngest has it, and I gave her a whole lot of attention. So, and I know other people too, but I think most certainly Trump probably came into the world with some funny wiring, so to speak, and I don't think the nurture was there in his environment from a mother, from a more feminine side that could have helped him to to be a better person, honestly. I think the one thing she did show him was that women are more interested in themselves and their own wealth, and that if he wants their attention, he's got to pay for it. Because Mary was very materialistic. Now, I know that this is also going, we want to look at addiction, but I'd say Marianne probably had a spending addiction. She had an addiction of self-absorption and looking after herself. She was very materialistic. That's, I think, where perhaps her addiction lay. I don't know if she drank, but I'll look at it. I do think she had a short temper. I think that it created a tense, a more unpleasant energy between she and her son as he aged. Okay, here's where I was looking for the cups. This is Mary's point of view. She has a great deal of loss, and we have a loss and change back in her past. I do think I read somewhere that she may have had a very difficult birth with Donald. That may have created some hormonal change. It could have also created a mental feeling that she could not bond with him. There's a sense of loss. She feels her attitude toward it is, it could also be that in spirit she regrets that she couldn't be a more involved mother with him. And maybe with 3 of her children. Because it looks like there could be 3. And maybe there was 2 she had a better relationship with. But I'm seeing 3 children, maybe not so much. She regrets that. And this may have contributed to a drink problem at some point. You know, maybe later in life or a little bit further on. Or maybe in the afterlife. In the environment We have the Knight of, the Page of Wands. So this is, I think she had him wanting to communicate. I think he tried to communicate with her as a child. He tried, but I think what he got was a very stern or very harsh or disinterested kind of cold response. I do think he wanted her energy. I think he wanted her attention. He may have been a bit too hyper for her, also with this energy. And this, well, that's a Knight. I feel like that's her energy responding. Now, in her hopes and fears, we're dealing, I think, again with a father figure, and we're dealing with also a husband figure. And I think she had a fear of her father. I think her father may have been a drinker. Maybe that's why they were poor too. And maybe that's why once she got married and she had more than a few nickels to her name, that's where she put her energy. Maybe there were things about Donald that reminded her of her father. Even if her father, or maybe even if Donald didn't get immediately involved in alcohol in his younger years, or definitely as a child, I don't think he did. But I think there were issues with the father. I think he is where she got this fear, but also maybe a want, a desire of having her husband's attention, or the attention of adult men, older men that had power. Just don't think she was terribly maternal. End result is the Three of Swords, a sense of betrayal and heartbreak and distance. So I think that relationship with his mother was very contentious. I don't think that ever really changed. I think she may have grew to regret that she just couldn't bond to him. But there was a lot of pain as a result, and a real sense of separation, not being able to bond, both for her, I think, and for Trump, and maybe other children with regard to Mary. Let's draw a few clarification cards. This is a family that I feel with that 7 was definitely felt like they were struggling to be the wealthy family to get respect. I don't think that they felt immediately, because they weren't necessarily, well, Fred had kind of older money, but they struggled for respect, and I think it's largely to do with the way they did business. They felt there was a very defensive position. I think Mary also felt maybe in concern to family money, on a very defensive angle. So perhaps she was very defensive of her family, but I think she also held a certain deal of violence, actually physical, maybe even. that's, there's anger here and a sense of having to defend herself. I think she had arguments with her family about some of her behavior as time wore on. I don't know that she was terribly agreeable. I think she may have been wonderful, charming to people that she was, as long as she was being the belle of the ball or socializing in society, but I don't think she was terribly warm with her own family. Okay, let's look at Mary now with regards to addiction. Now that we see why she was kind of cold, let's just stop here, and I'm going to do another one on Mary and addiction.